Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Monday, and today we are on lesson 10. Remember to have all of your materials ready for reading class. You are going to need your word web, your daily comprehension. Don't forget, your daily comprehension is attached to the same packet as your word web. You need your interactive journal, and you also need the circulatory story. Remember, you can always access it through Teams as long as you go through reading class. It's under General and Files, and you could always just click on it. And yes, you could also download it to your computer or to your iPad by clicking on these three little dots and then download. Okay, so go ahead and take out your Do Now. Today we are going to look up the word ventricle. And remember, ventricle, we are going to look in back of the circulatory story. Remember, the circulatory story has a glossary for us that gives us the definition to words we do not know. So let's go ahead and look up the word ventricle, and write it on the word web. Okay, and according to the glossary in back of the circulatory story, ventricle means one of the two bottom chambers of the heart that receives blood from the atrium and sends it out to the heart through an artery. So go ahead and copy that definition onto your word web. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the 1-minute timer. Make sure you're copying the definition of ventricle onto your word web. You have 49 seconds. So that word is ventricle. It's one of the two bottom chambers of the heart that receives blood from the atrium and sends it out to the heart throughout an artery. If you can't see this, remember you can have your book in front of you and copy it from there. And you could also draw yourself a little picture so that you can remember what is a ventricle. So if you were to draw a heart, it would be in the bottom. And you can just kind of show an illustration that it's receiving blood. And it's sending out blood, sorry. And time is up. Go ahead and park your pencils, and we're going to go ahead and move on. Okay, and let's move on to our objective. The student will be able to identify the main idea of sections of the circulatory story. Remember, boys and girls, what are the two questions you ask yourselves when you're trying to find the main idea or what the selection is mostly about? The who or what and the what about it. Great job if you said the who or what and what about it. Remember to always go back and access your key points. Remember, we wrote the key points for main idea. It is 1, who or what about it. We're going to provide the supporting details. Remember, we always provide textual evidence to confirm our main idea, and we use textual evidence. Now, why is this important, boys and girls? It is important because that way we know what the story or the selection is about and why the author wrote the selection. So for the biography for Clara Barton, we know the author wrote the selection to inform us of how or why Clara helped out so many people, not only soldiers, but she started helping out her brother. Then she moved on to helping the wounded soldiers during the Civil War, and then she moved on to help out the soldiers who could have been lost during the war or help out the families of the soldiers who were missing. And then she also helped out during the American Red Cross. Remember, she was the first president. And so that is the reason why the author wrote that, and that it's very important to know, why did the author write this? What's the main idea of this selection? What's the reason behind it? And our focusing question that we're still looking at, because we're in lesson 10, we'll see this until lesson 17, is what is a great heart literally? I know on Friday we discussed two ways the heart is a great heart literally. It was a great heart is healthy and strong. Yes, so I know that my heart, literally the one beating inside of my chest, it's healthy and it is strong. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a 15-second video, and I want you to make a connection to how is this related to what we're studying about a great heart literally. Okay, boys and girls, so what can we compare the people in Grand Central Station to? What is always on the move? It looks like they never stop. More keep coming in and out, in and out. What can we compare the people to? The red blood cells. Remember, what do red blood cells carry? Oxygen. Okay. What about the trains that keep going in and out of the station? What can we say the trains carrying the little red blood cells or the people were? What can we compare them to? The blood vessels. Remember, red blood cells travel in the blood vessels from one side of your body to another. Remember, it goes in a circular motion and it delivers oxygen throughout your whole body. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start reading pages 12 through 15 of the circulatory story. Remember to sit tall. You are tracking while I read. Make sure you have your book in front of you or you are slanting towards the screen. Okay, boys and girls, so in this next section, we are on the one that says, shut the door. So we can already start inferencing that this whole section is going to be about something that has to close, right? Because it says shut the door. And what do we usually shut? The door, right? And why? Because it has to close correctly. So as we see the diagram in the illustration, we see that it's pointing towards the aortic valve that opens and then the mitral valve that closes. So what is it referring to? What is this section going to be about? The aortic valve and the mitral valve. Yeah, and it even told me it opens and closes. So let's go ahead and get started. If you look up, you'll see that you just went through the mitral valve. That thumb was just the sound of the valve closing. Heart valves are one-way doors that keep the blood flowing in the correct direction. When the left atrium contracts or squeezes, the mitral valve opens. This lets blood go through the left ventricle. Then the valve closes and the ventricles contracts, pushing the blood out to the rest of the body. There are thin, strong cords that connect the valve to the ventricle wall and help keep the valve shut. So boys and girls, why is it so important for the aortic valve to open and the mitral valve to close? What does it do? Remember the who or what. What about them? What about the valves? So they're one-way doors that keep the blood flowing in the correct direction. Imagine if blood went everywhere around your body and there was no divided highway like the author told us at the beginning. There was no way of going down, no way of going up. Then your blood would be everywhere, boys and girls. Remember, there would be a huge crash. Nothing would be able to get through any other parts of your body. So remember, the doors are used to keep the blood flowing in the correct direction and so that it doesn't come back. Like most pumps, the heart can function with slightly leaky valves. What does it mean by leaky? That means that maybe a little bit can come out, right? So yes, kind of like when you close a door and underneath you could still feel maybe like a little breeze of air. It's fine. It can still work. With more serious valve problems, the valve doesn't close or stay closed properly. This lets blood flow back from the ventricle into the atrium. So boys and girls, if we're comparing the valves to doors, the door can be closed and in the bottom there could be a little breeze of air, which is fine, right? The author told us that's fine. However, if the door isn't closed correctly and the blood goes back, is that good or is that bad? Then there's a problem, right? Okay, this makes the heart have to work harder, which could damage it. Oh, boys and girls, so if those valves don't open and close correctly and they let a lot of blood go in and out, what happens? They can damage it. Yes, so remember, the doors are meant to let the blood go in one direction. But if the blood is trying to come back, a little bit of blood is fine. A lot of blood, that's when your heart has to work so much harder and it can damage it. But when everything works well, blood goes through the valve and keeps going where it's supposed to. So let's see. Everything looks good in here. Oh, boys and girls, so why did the author include this illustration? To show me that, do you think she has good valves or leaky valves? She probably has good valves, right? Because look what the author told me. Everything looks good in here. And I know that when valves open and close correctly, that means the heart is working correctly and it's not working harder than it should. Next page. Pumped up. Oh, I know this section is going to be about my heart being pumped. The left ventricle is a mega muscular chamber. Its walls are thick and strong. They have to be because they pump blood out of your heart and send it to the rest of the body. That's where you're headed to. So where are we going to go to next? So now we're going to go to the mega muscular chamber. Okay, and I know that their walls are thick and strong around the world. So boys and girls, does it mean literally we're going to go and read about around the world? No, it means figuratively, right? We're still talking about the circulatory story. We're talking about how blood flows correctly in the correct direction. Okay, so blood doesn't just slosh around in your body and it leaves in the heart. First, it goes through another valve called the aortic valve. Then it travels through blood vessels, which are like the tunnels of a super subway system. Oh, boys and girls, remember that video we saw about the subway? That's why, because it's comparing them. The main goal of blood vessels is to nourish blood cells by bringing them things that need, like oxygen. Blood travels through the entire body in different types of blood vessels. The main kinds of blood vessels are arteries, capillaries, and veins. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Veins carry blood to the heart. Capillaries connect the arteries. So boys and girls, I'm going to zoom out. Why did the author include this diagram? To show me. Yes, remember every single one of these has a job. So blood from the heart, the author is showing me that it goes through the artery, then it goes through the capillary, then it goes through the vein, and then it goes to the heart. And what's traveling through them? Red blood cells. And what are they carrying? Oxygen. Yes. If all the blood vessels in the human body were lined up end to end, you'll have to travel about 60,000 miles to get from one end to another. That's equivalent to going around the world twice. So look at this, boys and girls. It says if your blood vessels were to be taken out and they would be lined up, then they would be equal to what? 60,000 miles. And that's going around the world how many times? 2 times. Of course, we're not going to take out our blood vessels, but if you were to do that, then of course it would be very, very long time before you go around and come back again around the world, right? So here the author is trying to show me if I was to take out my blood vessels, I would be extremely tired. Oh my goodness. It would be a lot of times going around the world. 2 times? The world is humongous. It's huge. I can't do that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stop on page 15. Remember, our goal was to read up to page 15. Make sure you take out your daily comprehension. We are on Monday, and you're also going to need your composition book and a pen and a pencil if you have one. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with Monday. And I know, what is the title of this lection, boys and girls? What is it called? So let's go ahead and watch our book. And what is it called? The circulatory story. So let's go ahead and write that. So the title of this lection is The Circulatory Story. Now, who is the author, boys and girls? Let's look at the cover page. Who is the author? Mary, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and write here by Mary. And it's Corcoran, I think. And it's illustrated. What do we say illustrated meant? That means the person who drew the pictures, right? Who is it? It's Jeff. And we're going to put it right here. If you wrote as big as me, it's fine. You could just write it in the line at the bottom. So I'm not going to try that last name because I can't say it. Now, this book is about, what is it talking about, boys and girls? It's talking about red blood cells. Okay. What other thing is very important? So yes, red blood cells, they carry oxygen. But what are we talking about? Remember, first we were talking about a figurative great heart. Now we're talking about a literal great heart. So let's go ahead and write it here. Literal great heart. And remember, what does literal mean? It means real, right? Like the actual heart inside of your chest. Now, boys and girls, how many features or text features have we had? We've had so many, right? I love this book. So let's go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and go over to page 6. And it's the one that says saddle up that cell. What was this called? Remember, the illustrator is pointing to it. It's telling you what it is. It's pointing to the platelets. So it is a diagram. So it has diagrams. It has, what is this called, boys and girls? Saddle up that cell. A heading. So good job if you said heading. It also has, this little green creature is called what? Illustrations. Wait, but if I can see inside of the of the blood vessel, it's called what? What do you call that thing that we can see inside of the blood vessel? It's a cutaway. So go ahead and write that, cutaway. Remember, if we can see the inside, it's a cutaway. When it is like this and it tells me what it is, it's a diagram. Remember, your text features anchor chart should be in front of you. We have a heading, we have a diagram, illustrations, cutaways. Is there anything else that we are missing? So boys and girls, can this little creature actually be inside of our bodies? Saying, let's go, let me show you the body. No, right? So the author used a lot of what? Remember in this page when it said, if your heart is not divided, there can be a crash? Look what it compared it to, a highway. What is that type of language called? Figurative language. So the author loves using figurative language. And that's just so that you can make a connection. He described the heart that it needs to be divided into two, because if not, there would be issues, right? Just like a highway. If your parents were to drive in the middle of the street and there would be no signs, no rules, then of course there would be traffic jams, right? Okay, let's go ahead and continue. Okay, boys and girls, so now we are down to genre. Now, some of you said, Ms. Alvarado, this text is fiction because it has a lot of illustrations. I know these illustrations aren't real. I do have red blood cells in my body, but that creature is not real. It has a lot of illustrations. There's no photographs. It's not real. However, boys and girls, all the information the author is giving you is real. It is true. Your heart is divided. We do have red blood cells. The red blood cells do carry oxygen. Your heart literally can be strong, and it's a muscle. That is true. Now, because of that, it is an informational text. So it is informational. So this type of text is informational because it's informing the reader of what is inside of our heart, which is true. But the author uses a lot of figurative language and illustrations to show you the different functions of the heart, the red blood cell, and later on you're going to see other functions of the circulatory. So remember what's inside of our body. So it is considered a scientific text. So yes, it is informational, but it's also scientific because it talks about science. Now, the structure, boys and girls. I know the biographies of Clara Barton and Frank Helen Keller, they were written in a chronological order. That means they introduced the person when they were young, later on in their life, and then finally when they passed away. Is this the same here, boys and girls? No, right? It started off by introducing me the red blood cells, how they traveled around my body, and right now we stayed off reading about the heart and the valves, how they have to open and close correctly. So, is there an order? Or is this talking about each section and explaining it to you? So remember, the structure is how the author wrote this text. So the way the author wrote this text, which is informational, is each section has information to help the reader understand. So this one's a little bit different from our biographies. Remember, it's an informational text, so it informs the reader. That means it gives you information, details. The way it was written is that each section, remember, section is part of the story. It's not the whole story. It's a section. Has information to help the reader understand. Now, what do we understand? Well, it depends on the section. First, we understood the red blood cells, the job. Now we're understanding the heart and why it's divided and the valves. And then as we progress, that means as we keep reading, we're going to see different types of other jobs. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to write the structure. Make sure you're writing nice and clear so that you can understand this. Now, you are going to have a mid-module on September 11, which is about in 2 weeks. So September 11 is going to be your mid-module 1. Your mid-module 1 is going to have information about the circulatory story, and it's going to have information about one of the biographies. So it's very, very important that you're able to differentiate between a biography and informational text. You have 20 seconds. Once you are done with this, go ahead and take out your composition book and open it to a new page. Don't forget your name, date, and go. You have the last 5 seconds. Okay, and time is up. Go ahead and park your pencils and take out your composition book. Boys and girls, just a friendly reminder that if you were not able to assign yourself during your morning meeting with your homeroom teacher, you can always go to the reading class. And under general, look out for the channel that says weekly homework, which is number 2. Here it'll have the homework for the assigned week. So this is how you can go ahead and assign yourself for the week. Okay, so you should have your name, date, and go. I want you to label this lesson 10. And remember, boys and girls, our focus for today is main idea. What 2 questions do we ask ourselves? The who or what, and what about it? Great job. Remember, you're going to get very good at main idea that you're not even going to have to copy these steps down, but for now, I want to make sure that you understand main idea, or what the story is mostly about, is who or what and what about it. I want you to put a little star here. Now, if they're asking you what the selection is mostly about, so mostly about or main idea, remember to always ask yourselves those 2 questions. Who or what, and what about it? There you go. Now it's focused a little better. Okay, and the page that we are going to work for today is page 12. So I'm already going to start putting my number 1 and 2 because I need to determine if I have a who or what and what about it. So on page 12, I see that it's labeled shut the door. I know by looking at the diagram and illustration that it's talking about the aortic valve and the mitral valve. So boys and girls, do I have a who or a what? I have a what. I'm going to circle what. What is my what? The valves, right? Okay, so I can write here valves. You could put the aortic valve and the mitral valve. I'm going to put valves. Remember, it is plural. That means there's more than one. Now, what about them? What is their job, boys and girls? What do they have to do? So they have to open and close. Why? So that blood can flow in the correct direction, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and write it here. So valves open and close to allow blood to flow in any direction, boys and girls? No, in the correct direction. Okay, am I finished? Is that it? No, I have to do a full sentence or a complete sentence. So I'm going to start here with the valves, and I'm just going to copy what I just wrote. The valves open and close to allow blood to flow in the correct direction. Okay, don't forget your period. Remember, you're learning this with Ms. Ramirez. Always have a period. You always start with a capital. Is that it, boys and girls? Am I done? No. What is my next step? I found the main idea. Now I need 2 supporting details. Good. So I'm going to add here supporting details. How many do I need? I need 2. So I'm going to go ahead and go back as a good reader. Remember, we always go back and reread. If you look up, you'll see that you just went through the mitral valve. That thump was the sound of the valve closing. Heart valves are one-way doors that keep blood flowing in the correct direction. When the left atrium contracts or squeezes, the mitral valve opens. This lets blood go through the left ventricle. Then the valve closes and the ventricle contracts, pushing the blood out to the rest of the body. There are thin, strong cords that connect the valve to the ventricle wall and help keep the valve shut. Okay, boys and girls, so I know the main idea or what this section is mostly about is that the valves open and close to allow the blood to flow in the correct direction. What supporting detail can I write that supports that? That is the main idea. That's the whole function of the valves. So look what it says. What does a mitral valve do? It opens. So if we look at the illustration, what does it do? So it opens and closes, right? So here we can put the aortic valve. What is it doing? It's opening. So the aortic valve opens. So then what's closing in order for the blood not to go back? The mitral valve closes. So the mitral valve closes, the aortic valve opens. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to go ahead and copy that. So we have our two supporting details, boys and girls. We know what the section is mostly about, or the main idea, and we have our two supporting details. Now, for class, you are going to have to find the supporting details in the main idea for the following section. So you could already flip the page if you wrote as big as me, or you can write here at the bottom. You have the last 2 seconds. Okay. Alrighty, so let's move it up. So remember, we ask ourselves 2 questions. What are those 2 questions, boys and girls? The who or what. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that. And what else? What about it? So let's go ahead and write it. What about it? Now, the page that I want you to work on when you get to class, it's going to be page 14. So what page are you going to be working on? Page 14. So page 14 looks like this. So we were on page 12, 13, and page 14 is the one that starts with pumped up and it talks about around the world. Remember to look at also at the illustrations. A good reader always goes back and rereads. Okay, boys and girls, and don't forget your materials needed for class is your journal, which we're writing on right now, homework section, and your do now. I'll see you in class.